In this video, we're going to be taking kind of a different look from the aspect of the Green New Deal by taking a look at two different videos plus a little bit of more analysis from one of the people in one of the videos to show you that why it's actually bad to begin with. First, let's look at some of the analysis from one of the people, Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie has previously stated from the actual floor of Congress, this was actually one day after, this actually refers to the actual leaving of the climate accord, and it was one day after the speech from Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, who wanted to actually support the climate accord. He comes back the day after and made a speech on the floor, actually giving the science of how photosynthesis works to actually show people that the actual statement that carbon emissions being a pollutant is actually laughable. He states that actually plants need carbon to grow, and it doesn't matter where the carbon is coming from. He states that basically if you eliminate this, it essentially harms life on Earth. If you eliminate this, it basically causes plants to die. When plants die, they can't produce oxygen, the oxygen from this process, and when you have that happen is people then will have less oxygen on Earth and people will die. So basically we're talking that it will actually cause a negative effect on Earth. When we're looking at this overall, is he basically right here points out as something intelligent right here, is people were trying to basically state that Hurricane Sandy had something to do with climate change. And he points out something very, very smart here, which is
another question from the web. The president talked about climate change. It's not something, obviously, that we've heard a whole lot about in the debates that you've been discussing for the past hour or so. Your thoughts on where this might go in this 113th Congress?
I was disappointed to see him blame the droughts on human activity, and then to say that we're denying the evidence of scientists. And as somebody with a science-type background, I took offense at that. I would challenge him to show us the linkage, the undeniable linkage between droughts and the change of weather and some kind of human activity.
It's not like you're an MIT graduate. Oh, wait, you are. Sorry.
Yes, right there we're talking that basically his point that he's making is that he's trying to state that at this time President Obama was trying to blame droughts and droughts in regions of California at this time on climate change, yet he had no ability to provide the data to validate this point. This is something that he had no ability to do so. And because of this, we saw that because he could not do so, we're talking that he had that he basically was coming up with some type of no more than a religious argument of saying that gods did it, which is essentially the left-wing God is climate change. And this is the whole point. And it's nothing but dogma when it comes to anything. Anything happens out there, a hurricane happens, it's climate change. If you stub your toe, it's climate change. And it's always, if there's a unusually cold winter, it's climate change. And it could be based without actually looking at the actual facts. Well, the fact is if you can't blame it on the actual air, because the fact is when we actually look at density materials, we know that air is very, very dense and can't hold much energy, while solid materials are very dense and can hold a lot of energy. They can't really move to actually cause any damage. What's actually the most likely cause is actually oceanic movement, because when you look at that, water can actually hold the most energy with having the ability to move. And when we look at this, when we see oceanic movement, this is when you see different temperatures change, you see different storm patterns change, and that's where these storm patterns come from. And what's never talked about is that it has nothing to do with what's going on in the skies, but rather what's going on in the oceans. When oceans cross over from when cold ocean waters move over into warm ocean waters, or vice versa, this is going to cause an actual weather shift. And this is where you get El Nino and these other types of weather formations. And we already know this from just basic what's happened. And this is the way these situations happen. And that's the way weather changes happen that are abnormal. It's not from actually some type of climate change from something else. When you have more of these events happening, and it could be from human nature, because the fact is, but it's not from actually what we're putting out in the atmosphere. It's actually from what we're actually doing possibly at the seas, because we're a lot of times we're sending more ships out to sea than we have in the past with a lot of these cruise lines. Previously, we were only sending them out for actually delivery and military purposes in past generations, and then and that's why we weren't seeing as much of these weather change shifts. So if you want to blame it on that, that could be considered as a possible reason, but it has nothing to do with the actual reason overall of why, from an actual chemical standpoint. There's nothing on land that we're doing ourselves that's causing this. Now, if we actually look on the economic standpoint on this unicorn deal, we can actually look to Julie Borowski's video. She's a libertarian activist out of Washington, D.C., and she'll kind of explain when Obama initially came up with this $9 minimum wage idea. It's now gone up to where they're asking for 15 because apparently 9 wasn't enough. And we see that basically no minimum wage is ever going to be enough. And she'll explain really kind of why, and why raising the minimum wage is a bad idea to begin with, and why even the advocates on the left know it's a bad idea, kind of in the whole video.
Obama called for a $9 federal minimum wage in his State of the Union address. How did he come up with that number? Just an arbitrary number? A common libertarian response is, why $9? Why not $20, $50, $100? Supporters of the minimum wage may say, because it is possible for somebody to have a good standard of living if they make under $100 an hour. Also, it would be hard for somebody without experience to get hired for $100 an hour. Aha! Any minimum wage, whether it be $9 or $23, will prevent some people from getting a job. In this economy, you don't want to make it even harder for people to get jobs. Many studies have shown that raising the minimum wage increases unemployment, especially among teenagers. Let's say I'm a 15 or 16-year-old teenager, and I want my first job, but this is my resume. And I walk into a restaurant where I'm looking to get hired, and the boss says, "Sorry, kid, can't hire you. looking for somebody with more experience. But I really want this job. Please give me a chance. Wish I could. Can't afford to. Times are tough. I'll work for $7 an hour. Will you please hire me? I would hire you for $7 an hour, but I legally can't. Federal law says I have to pay you at least $9 an hour, and state law puts another dollar on top of that. Let me get this straight. I want to work for $7 an hour. You want to hire me for $7 an hour. We have a deal. The government won't allow me to give you this job that you want. I would have given you $7 an hour, and maybe in a month or two, would have given you a raise if you were any good. So I'm unemployed because of the minimum wage. How can I gain experience if no one's going to hire me because I have no experience? How does this help me out? Thanks, Obama. Supporters of the minimum wage claim that it helps poor people, but in effect, it actually hurts the uneducated and the unskilled. When the minimum wage increases, employers often have to fire employees, cut their hours, and raise their hiring standards in order to stay in business. People are not better off if they can't even get a job because of the minimum wage.
Now, if we look at that overall with it, we see that basically it doesn't matter that what this Green New Deal wants to promise for these wages. It is actually impossible to actually guarantee it unless unless we are actually guaranteeing government jobs. And in that case, all you're going to do is bloat the actual federal debt further than we actually currently have. And currently we're actually having a lot of the budget go toward actual interest payments, and that would only raise the level of interest payments to actually other countries who actually hold the debt than we actually see right now. So if we look at this, we'll actually see that that's all we're doing at this time. And that's why any raise to this is actually insane. And when they keep talking about $15 an hour, then at 15 is not going to be enough. $20, $25, $30, $50, $100, $1,000 an hour. It really doesn't matter the amount, but it's never going to be enough. And then they're talking about other types of things. That's why I brought up other points on this whole thing, and it shows why this thing is unfeasible to begin with, and it's kind of laughable that they even wanted to propose it. And if you really want to look at it, it's a unicorn deal. It's not even able to be proposed. Even from the Democratic side, a lot of Democrats think it's laughable, and they shouldn't even think of it even to be legitimate. Even your most valid progressives should be laughing at the preposterous nature of this, because the fact is it would put such a strain on the economy that it would basically bankrupt most of the country. Basically leaving it to basically where the government bails out every industry and making everything government owned, when what that's doing essentially is creating just basically a government tyranny and government slavery of everyone, because essentially government would essentially at that point own all property and everything, because that's essentially what socialism is. Socialism essentially is government slavery, as we defined before. So just going over these 2 points, going over the idea that there's no legitimacy behind climate change as they have provided to date, and showing how just with how they define of how minimum wages are formed, we can actually see that it's actually a terrible, these are terrible ideas that they come up with. We can see that they don't even know what they're doing. And that's why people like Pelosi are laughing at the actual proposals. uh, and that's on their own side. And when it comes to the opposition, being libertarians and the Republicans, they're basically making memes out of these things. I mean, for Christ's sake, she actually put the word Ocasio-Cortez actually put the word cow farts on her webpage before deleting this point on for frequently asked questions. I mean, it shows how basically backward she is on this whole point. They're worried about cow flatulence more than they are actually about what actually matters and actually proving the point. They can't prove anything, and yet they're continuing on this whole point. And we actually see that basically minimum wage only results in people not being able to get experience, and creating a system to where they're not even proving anything with actually legitimate science. They're only basically creating a religion. And you don't want to be basing your policy based off religious decisions. That's when you get a theocracy. And we don't want a climate theocracy. We actually want policy decisions based off actual facts. That's why when we go actually looking at science, we actually want to be looking at what actually really causes it, not just coming up with theories and making that have actually been debunked and making those theories basically the industry standard for policy. That's when you actually get problems. And that's where we're sitting at. We're basically getting these people making decisions off debunked theories. And that's not how you actually make quality policy. Once you have a debunked theory, that should essentially make you go in the opposite direction. Now, if you like this video, like it, subscribe, click the notification bell, and I will see you guys later today with some type of post. I'll determine to see what it is. I don't know if it's going to be my main post for the day or if it's just going to be another news post. But I will get to my main post to the day as promised on Twitter. And I'll see you guys later today. Bye.